This is the Your Money Hour podcast. I am your host, Dakota Grady, and welcome to the show, everybody. Whether you're listening online in California or around the world, thank you for having us today or joining us today. If you need help with your personal finances, I'm your guy, the money coach, and I can help you with your personal finance to maximize your money to level up your life. Leveling them up means going from where you are financially to where you want to be. And also, you have a business, specifically a nurse practitioner business, and you need help with accounting and taxes. I'm your guy as well. I can have you back with that, with accounting, taxes, and advisory for your practice. So check out my website for personal finance at dakotagrady.com. And for accounting, tax, and advisory solutions, check out theatdoc.com. That's theatdoc.com. Today I have a guest on the show. It is Dr. Danielle McCamey. She is a DNP or Doctor of Nursing Practice. And I think she's in Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. So she started the DNPs of Color. So I wanted to have her on my show because, again, I'm focusing on practitioners, NPs, DNPs. So why not have one of the, I guess, premier DNPs in the upstate of, I guess, part of the country. So without further ado, Dr. McCamey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to share the stage with you, Dakota.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. So tell about who you are and what you do, Dr. McCamey.
Okay, sounds great. My name is Dr. Danielle McCamey. I am an acute care nurse practitioner by trade. I work in surgical critical care, and I'm also the chief nurse practitioner of the Pre-Anesthesia department. I'm also the founder, CEO, and president of DNPs of Color, which is a 501c3 nursing organization where our focus is to advance nurses of color through networking, mentorship, and advocacy to increase diversity in doctoral studies, clinical practice, and leadership.
Wow, mouthful, right?
Yes.
So how did you get into nursing and why did you want to become a DNP? Can you explain what a DNP is as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So my nursing career was inspired by my mom. She did a lot of home health nursing. And by her being a single parent, she would tote me along and her clients were good with that. But through those experiences, it allowed me to see how well she took care of people and her attention to their care, and how after meeting with them, their day was so much more filled with life, and she gave them lots of hope. And so I was inspired by that. So I was like, Mom, I want to be a nurse too. And so she encouraged me, and I went back and forth with like, should I be a physician? Should I be a nurse? Then I wanted to be a physical therapist for a little bit, but then I finally made the decision to become a nurse. And so I went to the University of Virginia for my undergraduate. I went to, for advanced practice, I went to Georgetown, and for my doctorate in nursing practice, I went to Georgetown University. So what is a DNP? It is a terminal degree in nursing. It stands for Doctor of Nursing Practice. And historically, it was founded to be the clinical terminal degree. Since then, it's expanded to include all nurses that are involved in nursing practice. And it allows us to practice at the top of our scope. And some DNP programs have specialties with executive leadership, policy, education. My particular degree was policy and ethics. And so, yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell.
Wow. So I know that, let's talk about what are some of the constraints right now for a DNP or an NP? Because I know that in certain states, they are able to practice like a doctor and some are limited. So talk about those limitations, please.
Yeah, so advanced practice, there's a lot of varying scope of practice in different states. And scope of practice meaning the level at which we can practice. A nurse practitioner is basically a nurse that has advanced education and can operate from the nursing and medical models. And so with one of the main things that we're contending with is being able to freely practice independently without supervision from a physician. I practice in DC, so I don't necessarily contend with that restraint because I can operate within my scope independently. But we did see throughout the pandemic, the manifestation of when they dropped those requirements, how nurse practitioners were able to rise to the challenge to meet the need of the country during that time. And so it's something that we've all been, as a profession, looking to drop those barriers. And I think that the pandemic really highlighted that we are more than capable to practice independently.
And what is the difference between somebody getting a DNP opposed to a medical degree? Because I mean, if you're going to do the same thing, what's the difference?
Well, I don't, they're not necessarily the same, because the lens from the nurse practitioner and physician are different, because just based on the foundation of our clinical practices, physicians are educated from the medical scientific model, where the focus is on curative measures with a culmination of other curriculums. Nurse practitioner advanced practice is nursing at the core foundation, with some infuses of being able to diagnose, assess, and treat. And so the differences are, like I said, the traditional center foundational principles of each particular special career. And of course, education. Physicians have to get their bachelor's, and then they go to medical school. And depending on their clinical specialty that they choose, they have fellowships and additional education through their residency program that they have to follow through. In terms of nurse practitioner, we have to have, starting off our RN, and then we morph into masters. But now that kind of is changing to where having a doctorate is becoming like the entry level standard for advanced practice. But that's always been a conversation within nursing. And so it's always evolving. And you get your master's level, which is the current standard now. And then depending on your specialty, you're offered some degree of postmaster's education to bolster up your skills.
So basically, you go from a registered nurse to getting your bachelor's and get your master's for the family nurse practitioner. And then above that, with the DNP, is it another year, 2 years, 3 years to get the DNP? What's the process?
Yeah, so DNP, there's so many different programs that have varying lengths. My particular program was about 2.5 years, and a lot of it is dependent on your scholarly project, which is basically similar to that of a dissertation, but ours is clinical practice focused, where we find an intervention or some sort of evidence-based practice that we implement to see what clinical outcomes result after using that evidence from the nursing science in clinical practice.
All right. So it sounds like that you are doing some kind of, I guess, in the field to see, all right, we're going to use a particular remedy, and what are the results of that? Best in a nutshell.
Yeah, in a nutshell. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So when I go to the doctor, mostly I see the NP, not the doctor. I was seeing a doctor, but she retired this year, I think, and I moved back home to South Carolina. But most times I would see her when she, when I was a client of hers. But now I'm seeing an NP, so it's not like it's nothing new to me. But some people may want to see a doctor. Have you seen where there have been challenges where people don't want to see the NP, they want to see a doctor, and how have they responded? Are you responded?
Yeah, and I think we're in a place where folks can have their choice and who they see in terms of provider. I mean, like I mentioned before, our clinical practice vary a little bit, but ultimately the goal is diagnosing, treating patients so that they have the best positive outcomes.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if it's the same goal, then it really doesn't matter, right?
Correct.
So, question: why did you start DNPs of Color?
Oh gosh, DNPs of Color is my passion. And so when I was getting my doctorate, I was the only Black woman at the start of my cohort. And I also was the first in my family to get a doctorate. So I came with that lived experience of the pressures to succeed, to prove myself, and then also being a Black woman in America, all the things associated with that. And not saying that I felt alone, but I felt alone in my experience as I progressed needing some support and some community. So I looked to current organizations to see if there was a focus on nurses of color getting their DNP. And because it was so kind of specific, I didn't really find the puzzle piece that fit that need that I had. And so I put together a Facebook group that was back in 2016-ish. So fast forward to today, we've become a nonprofit and have been operational for about a year and a half, since May 2020, and have grown by leaps and bounds. A lot of folks feel validated in this space, and that was confirmed when we had our virtual conference back in on October 23rd, where we had over 200 folks register, which was really exciting because I was only expecting 60. And so, and a lot of the feedback we received was, it felt so good to see other professionals that are people of color that have their doctorates in nursing practice, because everyone kind of says in their respective areas that they're either the only one or there's just a few. And so just having that community and seeing it and all of us working together professionally was really profound for them.
It's awesome. And honestly, I feel that way in accounting too. I mean, because most times I've been either only male, only Black person in the organization, or maybe one of two. So yeah, I understand that, I guess, loneliness in a sense. So actually there's a national association of Black accountants, I think NAB, what they call it. So there's also an organization such as something similar to yours. So what have been some of the challenges as a DNP, I mean, as of color, like what are some of the challenges you faced, and then maybe even others? Share some of those stories if you could, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the challenges that comes to mind is having your DNP period. It's a fairly new terminal degree. So a lot of folks are don't know how to define us, or they over define us, and then we just kind of don't have any space anywhere. So explaining to folks what the DNP is and how we're able to operate and fill space in nursing practice has been an interesting experience, but that's one of the goals that we have as DNPs of color, is to educate folks on the versatility of folks that have their DNP, because those that have their DNP tend to still be in clinical practice, but then the DNP, having the DNP degree gives us an expanded look on systems, policies, procedures, organizational culture, how things work on a deeper level. So we have this duality about us where we understand the problems within clinical, and we understand the literature and how to find it to create a solution that directly impacts patient outcomes. So it's an evolving process for us to kind of continue to navigate and create our space in the doctoral terminal degree realm, if you will. So then when you add being of color on top of that, I mean, with already the other challenges that with racism and implicit biases in healthcare, and you know, it adds another layer of having to prove yourself and your worth, and that you're capable of performing and producing results. So a lot of times, you know, we deal with, I'll speak for myself, I deal with imposter syndrome in certain spaces because, you know, I'll introduce myself as Dr. McCamey, and they're like, well, what does that even mean? And I'm like, well, why is it even a question? So navigating that, you know, which, you know, as I've grown and evolved and being confident in this space and being okay with taking up space with my fro, with being unapologetically Black woman, confident, knowledgeable, and expert in my field, that imposter syndrome has quieted down significantly.
I think we all may have that same imposter syndrome, especially when you are of color and you've been told or seen that you aren't good enough. I saw one post recently, I think on one of the posts, either Black nurse practitioners, and it said like someone told a nurse that she, I guess someone like her couldn't, basically wasn't smart enough. I'm like, really? So those are things that are shallow that kind of break spirits, but when you rise above those kind of things, like if someone else who looks like me can do it, or even someone who doesn't look like me can do it, I can still do it if I believe myself and put in the work to do it. So I've heard that
Absolutely.
nursing is a hard, like this is a hard, I feel, because I heard the two classes, well, actually one, but it's like two levels, anatomy and physiology, or like two like hard classes. Is that fair to say?
Yes, anatomy, physiology, pharmacology. And they'll throw in statistics too, where it's like, you know what? We don't do math like
No.
that.
Yeah, like I went to school for my bachelor's, and I heard that is like a hard class. I mean, I think they had anatomy, physiology 1 and 2, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, part two. They really give it to you.
yes. So in terms of running your own practice or starting a business, what challenges or successes have you seen with your business and being in business for a year now?
Yeah. So, when I embarked on this journey, it was an idea from someone that I should turn it into a 501c3 nonprofit. And I tell folks, I'm like, look, I'm a nurse practitioner. I see you on it that like I can save your life any day of the week, but trying to put together a business plan and visionary strategic plans and looking at budgets and what's coming in, what's going on. It was a huge learning curve for me. And I am grateful that I have a wonderful circle of folks that are experts in various fields, including business and nonprofit, that I heavily leaned on. There was lots of YouTube videos listening on my commutes, like how to be a nonprofit CEO and, creating a board of directors and how to govern boards. And I actually went to Georgetown. They had a nonprofit executive management certificate program. I got a certificate in that. So it was, seeing the need, being invigorated and revitalized by the need for this community, that I was like lit a fire under me. Like I need to acquire the skills, and that requires reading, writing, getting more education so that I can be the best CEO. Because that's my goal, is to be the best that I can for this community, to run this business. So learning all the basic fundamentals of how to run a business was a huge learning curve. But some of the successes that we've experienced is, putting together a team is so key. I can't really stress that enough, because I've definitely leaned on my team and their various expertise that align with their respective passions. So everyone's active and engaged and involved and committed to moving the mission forward. And so where there's an area of deficit for me, I have a team member that picks that up and pushes it forward. So definitely got to have a team. Definitely showing gratitude of the team and the community that you serve. And just being, for me as a leader, it's important to be available and authentic. And that's kind of the vibes that I always like to put out. And also being accessible. Like folks will be like, hey, Dr. McCamey, can we have a conversation? Absolutely. Like, let's chat. Here's my cell phone, email, because I think that's important to just stay connected. And I think that when you develop those relationships, and that's another thing I'm learning in business, relationships and networking. I tell folks, I'm like, I literally learned how to network like yesterday, years old, because I'm such an introvert and it takes such a huge amount of energy and effort to just be on. And I'm like, I'm the CEO, founder, and president. I have to be on for this organization, especially as we grow. And so that's been a good learning experience on how to manage that, being an introvert and still keeping my cup full, and then being able to pour into others.
Yeah, having that learning curve is important. I mean, because you're open to growing, it's painful. The growth is painful, but also having that team to fill in the gaps where you're weak is key as well. And then is being who you are. I mean, naturally, I'm not 100% extrovert, but I am more of an extrovert than I am introvert. So my wife, she's opposite. She can talk and everything, but she's more introverted as well. So yeah, try to push her out, but she's grown actually. So in terms of like the field of nursing, I think I saw there's like 5% of nurses are medical doctors, or 5% are Black. And then even in the DNP set field, there aren't many men, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, healthcare professions, it's well documented in the literature that there aren't enough people of color, and so, but when you think about nursing, it's always been a white woman dominated profession. So it makes sense that, that would be reflected in current state. But I do know, it's funny because when I was thinking about some of my mentors that I have currently in my circle, they're mostly men. I'm like, I took all the male nurses and they're my mentors. So yeah, that's definitely true.
So is there a reason why there is a I guess there's a shortage of nurses, I heard, I read, but also is there a reason why people of color don't go into the medical field?
Everything is rooted in racism, and racism is, the powering of structuring opportunity that benefits others and disadvantages other communities. So I think a lot of it, when we have these strategic conversations as to why there isn't that much diversity in healthcare professions, it's rooted in access, it's rooted in, where folks are being educated. You think about communities that are under resourced, and so they're not having the teachers that are committed to student success, or students are having to choose from going to school or taking care of their mom that was sick at home and had to call out from work. And so we have so many other social stuff that kind of create obstacles on the path that we take to get to advanced education. And then there's finances, whether I'm barely making it through high school, but I know I have to get a job because I need to help mom or help dad pay bills because, they're either single parent or, have low income. So it's a very complex issue to why we aren't, making a beeline to healthcare professions. And a lot of it is rooted in just racism.
That's the hard answer right there, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's literally nothing else that I can say. Like, I've tried to candy coat, but it's like, no, it's racism. And since the murder of George Floyd, a lot of folks have been looking to examine the policies, the procedures, the structures that have been at play that continually drive these healthcare inequities and oppression of certain groups. But also, it's also some onus on us to position ourselves to find opportunities. But sometimes when you're not exposed to it, you don't even have the role models, you don't even know what's out there. And I think that's what gives a lot of validation for DNPs of color is, and when folks see other people have done it, they feel like they can do it too. Like you mentioned, like if that person can do it, then I can do it too. And then it expands people's minds and network, because that's a lot of things. When you're out, and I can say, like, I grew up poor, we were homeless at a point. You're just worried about surviving and living check to check. You're not worried about getting on a LinkedIn profile and trying to connect with someone. Right. So your perspectives and your priorities are just different. And so if there's ways that we can get into the communities to show examples and role models and provide resources and support and encouragement and mentorship in our networks, then we might be able to make some progress in increasing more diversity.
That's the good points. It froze, but it's all good. So yeah, that's a good points in terms of just being examples to other people. And then, like you said, you focus on eating, working to pay your bills. You're blinded to other things, other opportunities, and then the opportunities may not even be in front of you. So yeah, and then the networks too. I mean, it's not who you know. I think it's who knows you, basically. That's what it boils down to. Like, who knows you? And I think once people realize that there's a burden for exposing people to the medical field or accounting or taxes or whatever it may be, it's up to us to make it some change, and not just other people. Because honestly, it's just amazing to me how other people have just seen other people who aren't like minorities have just woke up last year, basically. I'm like, where y'all been? Like racism it's been here. So
Facts.
before we close, any final thoughts on your profession, your life? Just you got the floor. Just go ahead.
Well, I always like to close with encouraging folks, don't let your circumstances define your destiny or your path or your passion. Use it as your fuel to define it and refine it. I also like to just encourage folks to, if you haven't thought about nursing, to think about nursing. It's a wonderful field with lots of ways to make an impact once you get through your anatomy, your physiology, and statistics and biology. And then also, if I can, help anyone along their journey, or if folks are interested in DNPs of color, please look us up we're on all the social media platforms. Our handle is at DNPs of Color. Our website is www.dnpsofcolor.org. I am also on social media, so feel free to hit me up at Dr. McCamey. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, but I'm always happy to help people along their journey if I can be of service.
Awesome. So one more time with the website.
DNPsofcolor.org.
Awesome. So if you want to connect with Dr. McCamey online, she gave you all the platforms, so no excuses. And if you're afraid to take the anatomy and physiology, slow down. Don't be afraid. Do it. And if you fail, try it again.
Facts.
So Dr. McCamey, thank you for joining us on the Your Money Hour podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. Have a
You're
wonderful
welcome.
day.